All right, I think I
Yep.
hit the cloud. You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Take it away, sir.
All right. Everybody, I truly appreciate your patience. Technical difficulties to say the least. But again, I'm Carey Bailey, defensive line coach with the Ottawa RedBlacks. And what I want to be able to do in this session is really just talk about some basic fundamental run techniques. Have some film I want to be able to show you, but it's going to be base run techniques, and we're also going to talk about some of the movements that are involved in that, okay, with regards to gap exchange and being able to change leverage points within gap control that will hopefully allow you to pick some things up that might be able to help you with regards to your coaching, okay? So defending the run, D-line fundamentals. Now, with regards to defending the run, I believe in having some rules. I think you have to have group rules in terms of what you're trying to accomplish or what your main objective is. And I try to keep things to three. Ever since, coaching college, understanding how people learn, I try to keep things to three. And I always say, hey, if you can count to three, then you can play for me. So with regards to base rules as it pertains to the run game, in the group rules section, number one rule is that from D-gap to D-gap, as a defensive front, we want to protect the core, okay? So now, we have to be in conjunction with the linebackers and that type of thing, and sometimes safeties when they come down. But we want to be able to protect the core, and what that means is that I don't want anything slipping through any gaps that I'm responsible for. And once that ball crosses the line of scrimmage or gets into that gap, your gap becomes where that ball is, if that makes any sense. A lot of times, we're quick to yell at players, stay in your gap, stay in your gap, stay in your gap. Well, if I've got good leverage on a offensive guard, I'm a three technique, and that thing goes into A gap, and I can cross that guard's face. Once that running back, so that ball carrier's hat hits that seam, I'm gonna go ahead and cross that face and make the play. Your ball is where the gap is, okay? So we want to make sure we protect the core. Number two, reset the line of scrimmage in our favor. Especially in Canada where we have to maintain that 1 yard distance pre-snap, I have to be in attack mode all the time. So I want to be able to reset the line of scrimmage in my favor, and what we're talking about there is getting knocked back, okay? I want to reestablish the line of scrimmage. I want to get my hat into my seam. I want to be able to push people back, which now pushes the line back, which puts me in a better position to create minus yardage plays for the offense, okay? And lastly, the group rules, and we want to make sure that we're leveraging the ball carrier. Everybody has a gap in which they have to control, but everybody also has to maintain leveraging the ball carrier, and it starts from outside in. I think one of the biggest sins that you can commit on the defensive line is, coming underneath too quick or crossing face too quick when you're playing in the run game. So I want to make sure that per my gap and per the man that I'm lined up on, that I'm leveraging the ball carrier, one, through my gap, but then when that ball carrier attempts to cross one through another gap, and I'm able to cross face, then I won't be able to fall back and make that play. But we have to make sure we maintain leverage and vice the ball carrier. And understand this, think about gaps. Gaps are going to do one of two things. They're going to expand, they're going to constrict, okay? And then the other two is that they're going to move right and they're going to move left. And they're going to be doing two of those things on every play. So we want to make sure that we're constricting gaps as we're playing through people, okay? Now, what are my man rules? Man rules, individually, my responsibility, my accountability as a defensive lineman. Number one, own your space. We want to make sure we have our hats and our cracks. And I talk about hats and cracks, and that hat really extends from my hat to my gap side arm and my gap side leg. I want to make sure that I'm owning that space for which I'm accountable. If I'm able to keep my hat and my gap, and we have four guys up front that are taking care of 4 to 5 gaps, and now that linebacker is going to take care of the other one, and or safety, the other linebacker is going to take care of the spillover, then there should be nowhere to run. A lot of times where defensive linemen get into conflict is when I'm overly engaged with that offensive lineman to where I'm in a head-up position. And when I get into a head-up position, I've lost my leverage with regards to keeping my hat in my crack. Okay, so we always want to make sure that we have our hat, gap side arm, gap side leg in that space to make sure we're eating up that gap. Secondly, I want to get knocked back or push back. Okay, knockback is on the initial get off where I'm able to come off and have great leverage and be able to knock that offensive lineman back. Pushback takes place in primarily play action pass situations. I know we're talking about run, but play action pass looks like run, or run action pass looks like run on the initial 3 to 4 steps from the offensive lineman. So once I'm engaged, I have to be in a position where I have great leverage and be able to knock that guy back. Because again, that goes back to my group rules of helping me to reset the line of scrimmage in our favor. And then lastly, I want to have gap and man control. What does that mean? That means I want to own my gap with my body, but I have to control that offensive lineman with regards to not allowing him to get to the second level on free releases. Okay, I never want to have a free release on a linebacker. And if I do, God forbid, but if that happens, I better make the plays at defensive lineman because I've just sold out my LB, okay? Now, everyday drills that I believe in. Drill concepts. We're always going to work eyes, hands, hips, and feet, okay? Now, within that drill family, what we're talking about, ball get off. We're going to work that every day, okay? Because, again, without ball get off, nothing works. That's run or pass, and especially in Canada, where again I've got to take away and eat up that space, that yard. I have to regain that ground that I've lost. I better have great ball get off. Body control, talking about going through bags, running hoops, old-fashioned wave drills. Okay, anything where I have to change direction and put myself back in a control position where I can go make a tackle, where I can go make a play. Block destruction. We're talking sled work. We're talking key drill versus 2-on-1 in terms of small window schemes, half line, full line work, tearing off of blocks, okay? And all that can be done on sleds as well as with one-on-one individuals against each other, okay? And that's another thing. When we're working against each other as defensive linemen, we have to emulate what offensive linemen are doing. I talk to my guys all the time about being great actors, okay? We have to be great actors against each other and give each other great looks in order for us to maximize what we're trying to get out of that particular drill. If I'm a defensive lineman, I should be able to emulate what offensive linemen do because I'm studying that stuff, nine times out of 10 anyway, okay? Ball disruptions. What I mean by ball disruptions? That means in my tackling drills, getting hands on balls, punching balls out, forcing takeaways with my shoulders, my face mask, my hands, trying to get the ball out because you have to emphasize ball disruptions if you ever expect to have a high volume of takeaways. Tackling. Understand something about tackling. I believe this wholeheartedly. The essence of defense is tackling. The essence of offense is blocking. So you have to be able to be a great tackler in order to be a good defensive player. And anytime that we're doing any kind of drill, we always like to finish on the ball or finish on, when I say finish on the ball, finishing either in a tackling position or finishing on the ball in a tackling and ball disruption position. Okay, and I'll talk more about that a little later. Okay, and then takeaways again, hands on balls, trying to force things out, trying to rip things out, pull things out, learning how to recover properly in fetal position, learning how to scoop properly. Okay, and tucking that thing high and tight to the chin. So these are drills that I like to do every day, or the drill families like to do every day because that's really football, okay? All right, now, this is what I love. I got this, how old am I? I'm 51, okay. I got this basics of front plays. It's been tinkered with over the years as the game has changed, but I got this about 1993, whenever that was. All right, 27 years ago. But I got this from a guy named Kevin Ramsey, who I GA'd for at West Virginia, working with the DBs, but he got it from a guy named Francis Pay, who was the head coach at Northwestern University in Chicago. But this really has not changed. And I love it because these are the things that I should be able to see when I turn the tape on when we're playing base technique. Number one, and I've added this because I used to visit with Rod Marinelli and a few other guys in the league, and the resounding sentiment is that you better get off on the ball if you expect to make tackles for loss, those kind of things. So number one, BGO, I have to have great ball get off, okay? I have to be able to move when that ball moves and attack the line of scrimmage get into my leverage points, get my hat in my gap, and be able to push line of scrimmage backwards in order to be successful up front. Secondly, I have to have a base. Okay, what do I mean by having a base? I have to be in a power position through collision. Okay, and when I say collision, that's through collision of offensive linemen or through collision and tackling with the backside. And what is my base? And it differs for a lot of people. What I like to say is that my base is slightly wider than hip width. What I tell guys is this: your power base or your base is really your power stance. Okay, it'd be the same foot width as if you were attempting to do a power clean. Okay, that's the minimum narrow width that I'm going to have with my feet at any point in time when I'm engaged with an offensive lineman or I'm collisioning a back. If I have a good base, I'm going to have good power. Anytime my base becomes too narrow, that's when you start seeing guys getting turned or getting tossed. Anytime that my base is too wide, that's when you see guys getting knocked back or not being able to move from a spot because they don't have any power. So my power base is going to be slightly wider than hip width. And again, you know, I've had guys that were 6'7", 6'6", and their base might be a little wider and they're still able to have power. So it's going to differ, but on the average human being, it's going to be slightly wider than hip width. Now, number 3, cross-face gap replace. And this is predicated upon blocking scheme. If I'm getting a pull scheme, a gap scheme, or something of that nature, I either want a cross-face of the adjacent blockers coming down on me, or I want to be able to have good penetration where I can push vertical and come behind line of scrimmage and chase that puller in terms of gap replacing. So I've got to eat that gap up either behind line of scrimmage, or I have to eat that gap up by crossing the face as that new gap is developed. Okay, own your space. What does that mean? Own the ground that you're on. Don't get knocked back. You make sure that you get pushed and reestablish line of scrimmage. 5, keep your gap side, arm, and leg free. Going back to what I was saying earlier, in order for me to own my gap, talking about hashing our cracks, talking about our core rules and our man rules, in order for me to be able to own that gap, I have to have my gap side, arm, and leg free with regards to my body positioning as I'm playing that blocker. If I'm a 3 technique and I get a base turnout, or if I'm a 3 technique and I get a reach block, I need to make sure that as I'm engaged with that offensive guard, I'm able to play with my gap side arm and my gap side leg in that gap, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to come off of that block and tackle something without having an arm tackle, which is probably going to get run through, without having an arm tackle in order to make the play within the space for which I'm responsible. Okay. 6, play with a Z. What does that mean? Always have bend at hips, knees, and ankles. Okay. If at any time I lose my Z, I'm going to lose leverage. And when I lose leverage, I'm losing power. And when I lose power, I'm getting knocked back, which cannot happen up front. Okay. So I want to play with a Z. And my Z is going to, and what I tell young guys is this: basically keep your feet behind your butt and your butt behind your neck. Okay. And that's going to put me in a leverage position to where, or what we call, you know, the old fashioned good football hitting position. I want to maintain that bend in order for me to be able to play within a position that's not going to allow me to get knocked backwards. All right. 7, play with shoulders square and pads over your toes. When my shoulders are square within my gap, okay, I'm able to eat up more space with shoulders square in a gap as opposed to being turned. Anytime that your hips get turned, that's where you're going to go. And what happens is this: I see sometimes a lot of coaches teaching defensive players to play the reach block by kind of shuffling and working laterally. That's not what I want to do. I'm always trying to work forward. So I'm running, okay, keep my shoulders square, fighting pressure with pressure, but I want to make sure that I keep my hips square and my shoulders square, because that's going to allow me to eat up more space and have leverage to knock back. You know, it's like, you ever had your engine go out? I had an old 1984 Buick Regal back in the day, but I had to push it a couple times, right? I can't push it sideways, or I can't turn sideways and push the car. I have to stay square in alignment with that bumper of that car in order for me to have enough power to make it go forward. It's the same thing with offensive linemen. If I'm square and my shoulders are square, I'm going to be in a position to where now I can go ahead and push forward. With my pads over my toes, all that does is reinforce playing with a Z, okay? Pads over your toes, if you maintain leverage, shoulder square, help you to make sure that you keep as much space in those gaps as possible. Okay, now, play progression, okay? And the worst thing that you can do on any side of the ball, but primarily on defense, is not understand what your pre-snap and what your post-snap responsibilities are with regards to your assignment, okay? So we talk about the play progression. Here's what happens, okay? Pre-snap, I better know the call, okay? I cannot function properly within the defense if I'm out there just playing, you know, and the worst thing that drives you crazy sometimes is you see a kid mess up and you say, what are you doing? Oh, I didn't have the call. Okay, well, why are you out there playing? Know the call. So from the call is going to dictate my alignment and my assignment, okay? My alignment and my assignment is going to dictate my stance. What do you mean by that? Well, if it's a situation where I'm doing a movement stunt, then I may have my feet a little different. If it's a deal where I'm trying to jet a gap, I may have my feet a little different. My stance is going to be dictated based upon the alignment and the assignment. Next, anticipation. What is anticipation? Anticipation is play anticipation, pre-snap. You know, a lot of times, especially with offenses these days, sometimes you can get some keys, you know, be it if they're in eye backs or if they're in strong or weak set, or if they're in gun or pistol, or if, you know, it's far or near, whatever the case may be, there's going to be things within that player's window that he should be able to recognize based upon film study and the information that you've given them as a coach regarding tendencies of plays. It might be a three-man surface and as opposed to a two-man surface. It might be a wing as opposed to a tight slot. Whatever the case may be, being able to anticipate what the play is going to be based on what I see in my window is going to allow me to play fast, okay? And then keys. What are my keys? Primary, visual, and pressure. My primary key is always going to be the ball, okay? So we talk about a lot playing with expanded vision. What does that mean? Well, you have to be able to develop the peripheral vision of your players. My primary key is going to be the ball, right? Ball get off. I'm going to move on movement. My visual key is going to be the man I'm lined up on. And here's why I say this. I'm not crazy about having, especially the closer you play the ball. If you're a 0 or 1 technique, a 2-eye, a 2 or 3. The closer I am to the ball, the faster things happen. So with that being said, I better be in a position where I can see the person I'm going to be fighting as opposed to looking somewhere else. You know, it's kind of like, you know, if I'm in a boxing ring or better yet, let's talk how some of us have lived in the past. If I'm in a bar fight, all right, and I'm fighting 2 people, well, I'm most likely going to get my butt kicked. Anytime you're in a bar fight, I better fight one guy and I better be watching him and then just deal with the consequences of number 2, okay? But I have to beat the man that I'm lined up on in order for me to have a chance to be successful in that place. So my primary key is the ball. My visual key is the man I'm lined up on. Now my pressure key is going to be the adjacent lineman. So what do I mean by pressure key? If I'm a 3 technique, line up on the outside outside half of the guard, I'm going to see the ball peripherally as it moves, see it moving down the line. My eyes are on that guard's tip of his pad or via the neck, whatever you choose to do. But then my pressure key is going to be that offensive tackle that's right outside of me. If I attack that guard and he base blocks me and I feel that tackle coming down on me, I know it's a double team, okay? If that guard tries to reach me and that tackle tries to punch me in my hip, then I know that's going to be a power slip block. So I have to be able to play those things accordingly based upon primary visual and pressure, because that's going to allow me, again, through anticipation, to know what's happening as it happens. Now, post-snap, fog it off. I got to go. I have to be able to recognize on the run, whether it's run, pass, okay, or the type of technique I have to use if I'm executing a movement or it's in short yardage, okay? Point of attack, knowing point of attack and run, pass, and movement. If I am playing a base technique, my point of attack is going to be if I'm a 3 technique, the tip of the pad of the guard, or if I'm a 2-eye, the inside half of the guard, or if I'm a 1, the outside pad of the center, or if I'm a 2-eye, it's key in the center, there's going to be the outside half of the center. So whatever your technique is within that, but knowing my point of attack after my ball get off. The collision. Now what happens in collision? leverage, HP, hand placement. I have to know where to place my hands. Am I going both hands tip of the pad? Am I going both hands to the breastplate? Am I going near hand tip of the pad, down hand far armpit? Whatever you teach, that collision has to take place as soon as I execute engaging the point of attack. Then, talking about separation of slip, being able to get a lockout, or being able to quick slip the block if I'm trying to get penetration. If I'm playing base technique, the one thing I'm always trying to get to, if I get a reach, or if I'm getting a base or a block two, I like to call it, the quicker I can get separation and get him off of me, the faster I can disengage that block. Now, in terms of disengaging the block, which it says escape, I can shed it, okay, in which now I'm throwing and going. I can rip off of it, in which now I'm opening up the gap side and ripping through with a low shoulder, or I can cross it, and that goes back to the gap exchange or the gap blocks, which I'm getting a puller, and now I have a new gap in which I have to cross face or gap replace, okay? Then closing to the ball carrier as soon as I escape off the block. Now, here's where the big time effort comes in. I have to have a violent release, okay? Nothing that you do up front can ever be passive, and it cannot be casual. There's an old saying, if you're casual, then you're probably gonna be a casualty. So I always wanna be in an aggressive, violent, dominant posture anytime that I'm trying to disengage from a block. So we always talk about violent releases as opposed to just, a separated shed. So it's going to be a violent shed, a violent rip, a violent cross, violent arm action, extreme strain body movements, okay? Pursuit, making sure I'm taking the proper pursuit angles, but again, we're talking about extreme pursuit. And what is that extreme pursuit? That's when I'm selling out, high knees and elbows, trying to get to the football. And then FOB, finish on ball, okay, with a violent tackle. So I always want to finish on the ball, because if I'm finishing on the ball, I'm having an opportunity to try to do what? Force a takeaway, punch it out, rip it out. If I'm around the ball and one of my teammates does that, now I have a great chance of recovering it for our team. Okay, so the more bodies we can have around the ball, then the better we're going to be in terms of getting that ball, taking it away, and putting our team in a better position to win. Okay, gaps. Here's what I like to call gaps. Again, two inside gaps, A gap. Between the guard and the tackle is B gap. Tackle tight end, C gap. Anything outside of the tight ends is D gap. Now, if there were to be a slot, a tight slot, or somebody else outside that, now becomes E gap, then F gap, so on and so forth, okay? But we're talking about primarily taking care of the core and controlling the core, and you want to do that D gap through D gap. In terms of alignments, okay, all outside edge alignments are going to be odd numbers. Now, in Canada, I love it like this, down south, down here in the States, outside the tight end, we've always called 9 technique. But then it's like, okay, well, where's the 7? Well, 7 is going to be inside. So this is so much simpler. I love it. So anything head up on an offensive lineman is going to be an odd number, 2, 4, and 6. Anything on the inside half of an offensive lineman is going to be an odd number with an I attached to it. So 6I meaning inside. I'm going to play a 6, but I'm playing 6 inside. I'm going to be a 4, but I'm a 4I, so it's 4 inside. 2I, 2 inside. Okay? So that's how we operate. Okay, now, run defense concepts. How am I going to be able to play the run? Well, I can do it by numbers, in which I have more than them at the point of attack. That's by, bringing safeties in, bringing halves in to come and add to the front with regards to the run game. I can do it by movement, okay? What does movement do for me? Movement changes gap leverage. Movement is also gap exchange, so it can take me from A gap to B gap to A gap, D gap to C gap, so on and so forth, and working in conjunction with the backers. You can create some confusion in terms of how offenses are blocking you. And it can also create some confusion in terms of opening up some extra spaces in which you can have run-throughs by your backers, okay? And then core pressure. Core pressure, what is that? That's now where I'm bringing 5 and or 6 in the run game, which is going to allow me to create single leverage matchups across the front. Okay, now, 3 types of movement. You got gap exchange with penetration, okay? That's where me and the backers are now exchanging gaps, but as opposed to me trying to leverage another offensive lineman or adjacent offensive lineman once I enter that gap, be him coming to me, I'm just going to try to ricochet and penetrate, okay, off the gap exchange. And it's straight penetration in which now I'm going to take that step, get vertical, or I may have to take that step and have hands on. And then there's flow, in which now my gap is predicated on the flow of the offensive line. All right. Now, something else. A lot of times in football, we talk about gaps, leverage, we talk about hand placement, we talk about movement and all these things. But I think that you have to make it a daily habit to talk about hitting, okay? The thing about defensive line is that it's the only position on the football field in which you are engaged in a violent collision on every snap. And we're doing that primarily because we're attacking and trying to get knocked back. So we are initiating the collision, but it's taking place every play. I can be an offensive guard playing against a 3-4 defense and never touch the soul for 10 to 12 straight plays, okay? So I think it's important that you have to talk about hitting. You got to talk about it daily. You have to create a mindset that allows them to embrace the collision that's going to take place, you know, over the course of 60 to 70 snaps. Hopefully it's not that many, but that's how it's happening. Okay, stress violent movements. In other words, you know, as you know, the adage says, you want to be the hammer and not the nail. I think the more that you stress violent movements, the more that you stress hitting, the tougher and the more violent that you become as hitters. You know, I think you have a chance to allow guys to be overly aggressive and to make a lot of plays that sometimes you would expect to make. And then you must be tough in order to embrace the collision. I had a coach tell me one time that nothing about playing defensive line feels good except winning, okay? You're going to be sore. You're going to be tight. Things are going to hurt, but you have to be able to get through it, fight through it, you know, become pretty calloused and make sure that you are always going forward and embracing the violence. I've got to say it, the violence that really comes with the position. Discipline.
Hey, Coach Bailey,
Yeah.
we got a question here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's asking how much penetration should a lineman try to get? Should he get to the offensive lineman's heels or how far?
If I can't anticipate flow, I want to get to heel depth and be able to redirect. So you penetrate, because sometimes what happens if you just go crazy and shoot the gap and get up the field, sometimes you can create those diagonal seams that those backs can go ahead and slip through. If you get to heel depth, now you've reestablished the line of scrimmage because your body is behind the initial LOS. So you want to be able to get to heel depth and react. Cool?
Thanks, Coach.
No problemo. All right. Discipline. You have to be able to emphasize the little things. Make a big deal about details. There's no place where you will get exposed quicker than the defensive line when somebody is not detailed in their technique, okay? So you have to emphasize the importance of being great technicians, and you got to coach the little things. Hat, hand placement, body position, feet, eyes, hands, hips, feet, okay? You have to be able to coach those 4 concepts and the particulars within those 4 concepts that will allow those guys to be consistent every time in their technical play. Okay, if you want it to be important, you have to make it important. You know, like we last little section talked about hitting. Well, when you get a big hit, make a big deal about it. You know, bring in cupcakes to the meeting room, whatever the case may be. Find a way to reward those things that are being done properly within the constructs of how you want it done. So again, if you want it to be important, you have to make it important. Make them understand the why and why we do a certain thing. This is so critical, especially with this generation. Like I said, I'm 51. A lot of you in this group are probably, you know, a little older or whatnot. I say older, anything over 30, really. You know, when I was coming up, if my coach said, hey, do A, B, and C, I'm gonna do A, B, and C and not ask why, all right? This generation, you know, if you tell them to do something, well, why are we doing that? Okay, they may not say that, but their mind is thinking that. And I think when they're able to understand the why with regards to using a particular technique or particular schematic or whatnot, in terms of understanding what the big picture is and how their why fits within that picture, you get a better execution because they understand what's going to happen if they don't. Okay, they understand the consequence of not doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, the why is we're trying to make this happen. If we don't have this why, then something bad is going to happen. Okay, and then hold them accountable and create an environment in which they hold each other accountable. You know, peer pressure sometimes is one of the greatest motivators. Okay, and it doesn't have to be negative peer pressure. If it is, it's going to come from with how they deal with each other. But there has to be understanding that, hey, there's a methodology and there's a way in which we're going to operate and do things. And, you know, if one of us does not do it right, then all of us are affected. If all of us do it right, then all of us are going to benefit. So accountability is important. Again, I don't know if you can have discipline without accountability, and vice versa, because your discipline is going to allow you to maintain the accountability, and being accountable is actually, to be able to do that, you have to be disciplined. Okay. Now, real quick, I want to touch on play, action, pass. And the reason I want to talk about play, action, pass is because play, action, pass, and run are really intertwined. For the first three steps, it all looks alike, right? The difference is within play, action, pass, and even in your run, action, pass, something's going to be different. I had a player about 20 years ago, never got fooled on play, action, pass as a defensive lineman. I mean, if he saw it when we slip and, you know, press and go force the quarterback or make a play. And I asked him one time, I said, how are you able to see that? He said, Coach, it sounds different. Okay. Something's going to sound different within that collision because those guys really aren't ripping off the ball the way that they could or whether they would in the run game because they don't want to have any extra seams be created by guys getting on different levels. Why? Because it's a pass, right? So something's going to be different about that. You got to pick the thing up on film. It might be a stance. It might be an angle departure, whatever the case may be. But you got to be able to find that and give that to your players. Okay. Again, play, action, pass, same as run. The key is getting knocked back and pushed back, attacking a third of the man, hand traps, getting hands off of you, and recognizing the slide on the run. Okay. Then with the rush type, continuation only occurs with great big ball get offs. If I get off on the ball quickly, I get play, action, pass. I'm able to recognize it. I can keep on going. If I play the run off of a hesitation, in other words, I see it late. Now I'm playing the run, trying to hold my gap. Oh, shoot. Now I recognize I have to reestablish my edge and utilize escape move. Got to practice worst case scenarios, okay? Especially with interior players. So what do I mean by worst case scenarios? I want to be able to put them in a situation, you know, if I'm working play action, put them head up. Tell the offensive lineman to hold their shoulders. Now I got to work to where I get arms off of me, jump back on the edge and try to push to get some pressure. I'm going to go to some film right now. I know we're kind of running pretty fast and trying to get a lot of stuff in, but let me get out of this. People and
Coach, we got another question for you.
Yes,
as you're transitioning there.
Absolutely.
When you talk about the play, action, pass, believe what you see, feel, and hear.
Yeah.
Do you teach defending the draw the same way?
Yes, absolutely. But with the draw, it's kind of backwards. You know, like with play, action, pass. I'm getting that hard run action at me. And then now they're trying to hold position, hold spot, and then now I got to convert. With the draw, what am I getting? I'm getting that high flash sometimes. But here's the thing about draw. Typically, it's either going to be a tackle or guard. They're going to do something different in their set in the draw game as opposed to their regular pass set. Okay? You know, sometimes let me show my hands. Sometimes those tackles, guards will flash and then try to go, or they'll have their hands down and then trying to go. When any other time, they're going to be in a nice, comfortable, high hand position in regular drop back pass. So there's going to be something different about that set that should be recognizable. Okay. So to answer your question, yes, we teach it the same way, but we teach it kind of backwards in terms of the recognition progression. Let's see here. Okay, all right. Let's get into some gap exchanges now. Gap fronts. Okay, now this is some film that we had last year from Toronto, and there's some nice movement here, and I really want to kind of concentrate on that. There's some nice movement here with regards to how we try to create penetration with gap exchanges between tackles, gap exchanges between tackles and ends, and then even getting with some of the linebackers. Okay, so let's see, what am I? See if we can get this. Haha, okay. Now, this is something we called ABE, and basically it was an A-B exchange between the tackles. Okay, everybody else is playing regular technique, but what we did, here we go. It's gonna be a little blurry for a second. There we go, now it cleans up. But what we did was this. Don't have my little marker or whatnot, but between the defensive tackles, they would actually exchange gaps on flow. So here's what would happen. If flow went this way, then the left defensive tackle is going to penetrate through the hip of the center, and the other defensive tackle is going to wrap around. Okay, so what we're able to do is get quick penetration and hopefully force the cut back into the wrapping defensive tackle coming around. So right here, because flow goes away, he penetrates, he wraps around, he penetrates and makes the play. That's awesome, okay? But what it does, which I really like, I'm able to eat up both A gaps from behind the line of scrimmage, okay? It allows the backers to run because the backside C, B, and A are being eaten up. Front side A is being eaten up by penetration. So now the only open gap is right here. So now I got a free hitter, but the defensive tackle makes the play instead, which is awesome. Okay, same thing. I think they have a flow anticipation here. That's a, okay, these are all the A's. Run or pass. Run or pass this. Nice one right there. Straight to flow. He's going. He's coming around. That's a quick pass. Okay, so that's one way to do an interior gap exchange, okay? Let me see here. All right. Let me get back. Uh-oh. Bear with me, folks. The wrong button. That's okay. Had it all set up too. Hold on. Okay, where's, oh, bear with me. Okay, now, this is what we call deuce. Now in deuce is a flow movement. Okay, so what does that mean? That means we're lined up in 2-2s, and the gaps that the interior defensive linemen have are going to be predicated on flow. So if I'm the left defensive tackle and I'm playing a 2 technique on the guard, if that guard goes right, I've got the B gap. If that guard goes left, I've got the A gap. Okay, so it's a flow movement defense. Now, I like the flow a lot because what it does, it exchanges gaps with regards to who guys have. Like if you watch it right here, if I can pull this thing back. Okay, so right now, if you look at it, he's out, they're trying to run zone. That center is eyeballing this linebacker, okay? He wants to come here, get a hand on him. He wants to cut him off, and they want to be able to base press this. But what happens is, because of the exchange, it screws him up, it screws him up, and it screws him up. Here we get a run through. Okay, great job by the end now coming down, flow away, but same thing here. Bring this back. Where's my mouse? Here we go. All right, same thing here, okay? Flow goes there. He ends up being B gap. He ends up being A gap. Now, this kid right here did a great job, in my opinion, of fighting through and making sure that he stays in this gap. Now, it happened over here, okay? But this type of block in which they're trying to get that stack push, that's tough, okay? He really wants to work to where he gets his hat right there on that 5, and now these two take over these two. But he can't get there because he does a great job of pressing that thing, and now he shows up late. So he's in that gap, that back, can't go there. He's climbing, so only place to come now, because look, I got body, his body's in that gap, so got a backer that can fall. Body, hat and crack, only place he can go is cut back. Here he comes right now down the line. Hey, how much time I have, Dave?
You still got another good 20 minutes before it hits an hour, Coach.
Awesome, awesome. Okay. Deuce again. Now, like I said, if he comes here, he's got A gap. If he goes there, he has B gap. And now he takes A, and he takes B. They go the other way, it's the same thing. These 4 guys are working in conjunction with regards to this type of exchange. Okay, I like it. Hat and a crack, hat and a crack, hat and a crack. He's going to come put his hat in that crack, hat in the crack. He's taking care of the edge. Should not be anywhere to go. All right. So that was the deuce in which you have 2 tackles, head up on the guards, and now you're operating off of a flow. So that's a flow movement. Okay. All right. Oops. All right, now let's talk about, all right, this is what we call glove. Now, here's what glove was. We're lined up basically in 2 eyes, but what's going to happen is this. If flow comes to me, I'm going to stay in my gap. If flow comes away from me, then I'm going to work into the B gap. So let me show it to you if you can see this. Clears up. Okay. So in this instance, watch this. If flow were to come this way, okay, he would stay in his gap, and now this right defensive tackle would stick and go B gap. So we end up being able to run into an over or into an under front based upon flow. Okay. So we're only really moving one person in this particular deal as opposed to moving two. Right there. See it from the end zone. Okay. So again, we got flow going this way. He's going to stay in his gap because flow's coming to him, to the ball. He is going to play and then jump B gap, and he goes and makes the play. So on flow, he ends up being a 3, a 5, a 1, a 5. We end up being in a form of under, or in this case, over, as you see it to the field. Back a little bit. Okay, so again, this instance, we're in two eyes or in a two-way gap positions. Flow's getting ready to come here. This defensive tackle would have been B gap. He'll stay A gap. Okay. All right. Let's go. Artist change.
Hey, Coach Bailey.
Yes.
In glove, how would you handle a puller? What do you tell the guys to do versus a puller?
Well, let's say if that guard, if that guard leaves me, then now I'm gonna go ahead and try to shoot it. You follow me? So let's say, let me go back to a second, show what I'm talking about. So let's say, okay, let's go to the end zone. Uh-oh, there we go. Let's go to an end zone look. See what I'm talking about here. All right. So, like, let's say we're getting some kind of gap scheme strong, right? So we're getting this, him pulling, him blocking back, him blocking down, out, he pulls up. Well, this defensive tackle, once that pull takes place, we're telling him, step, if you can get vertical and get it, great, or come over top with it. He has dealer's choice on that. We want to get him following this guard. Because remember, we still have that yard space, so my first step is still going to be vert, okay? And then now I can go ahead and drop step and get over top of it. Does that answer it?
Yes, it does. Thanks, Coach.
Awesome. All right, let's go to fronts. There we go. Got to figure it out. All right. G fronts, T fronts. All right, I'm gonna go to some of the static fronts. Some of the static fronts here. Where? And if I'm correct, take that back because that's all past stuff, people. All right. Let me go to the Glock. Yeah. All right, now, here we go. All right, now, Glock is just like glove, but what we're doing is that we're bringing a backer. We want to bring the Mac backer or the Mike linebacker through the seam that's created once the exchange takes place. Hopefully it'll clear up here. There we go. All right, so we still have the glove action inside. So let's say if Flo were to go this way, if it went this way, he would go there, he'd stay there, that back would get a run through. Or vice versa. I'm sorry, I'll take that back. Take that back. The backer opposite the back was getting the run through. That's what it was. Okay. So he's opposite the back, he's gonna do the run through. Apologize for the screen. I think right now everybody and their mother is on the broadband right now tonight. So anyway, hope you guys could have seen that. There we go. Now we're clearing up. You must have heard me talking about them. NSA, conspiracy theorists. Okay, Glock again. Still got the glove on the inside. Opposite the back, you have the run through right here. There he goes. So when you're talking about in terms of getting numbers, okay, now what we're really doing when you look at it is that we're pressuring the line with 5 people. And now when you pressure the line with 5 people, it's difficult to get combination blocks, okay? Glock action here, run through. I'm sorry, people. God dang it. Getting happy with my trigger finger. That's the first one. Second one should be coming up. I apologize. Here we go. We run through, forces it. There we go to the cleanup man. Right there. Okay. All right. Hold on. Okay. Fronts. Now, I believe, hold on. I'm looking for one of the 5 main deals for you. Oh, here we go. No, I apologize. I thought I had all the runs together. Let me get out of this. Okay, here we go. Let's go to, where are my, you got fronts. Even. Okay, here we go. Let's go to our even. There we go. Even jab, we run stuff. Okay. When we went even, basically in even, we were lining up in 2 2s, okay? And what we were doing is that we were having those 2 2s be A-gap players. Now, as they were A-gap players, one of the gap exchanges we were using, now we're talking to the defensive ends, okay? And even jab means that we were going to take a jab and come underneath the tackle away from flow or away from the back, anticipating flow going that way. So it was a way for us to get a gap exchange between the defensive end and the linebacker that side, or whatever overhang player that we had that we want to force the football. Hopefully it'll clear up. Forgive me on these drop boxes. I'm not yet. Okay, that's not the one I wanted. Forgive me. Hold on real quick. So I'm trying to find the run stuff for you. Toes.
Hey, Coach, you're bringing up another jab clip here. Can you talk a little bit about the footwork of the defensive end when you're asking them to jab inside the B gap?
Absolutely. What I like to do is I like to have the defensive ends, it's me personally, I like to have the defensive ends with their inside foot up, okay, and their outside foot back. And here's why. I think that you're able to execute your movement stunts with flow coming to you a little better because you really sell the upfield attack with the outside foot. You know, in the CFL, what I've seen a lot of times, especially even in the U League, is that sometimes those ends will have their inside foot back, and I get the other. Let me back up. They'll have their inside foot back, but sometimes they end up stepping too far underneath, and now that tackle can really just engulf me and drive me through and keep me from getting penetration. I want to make this thing be almost as if I'm executing a crossover in basketball. I want to take a step up and then be able to come back underneath of him because I want to step up to make him think that I'm going to go to a point in which he has to intersect, okay? But if I just go in there right now, then it can just turn into a wash where he passes me off to the guard. Now the tackle climbs to the second level, or he can just engulf me, and now it's just a freaking train ride, you know, going down the field. So I want to have inside foot up, outside foot back, take that hard step vertical, and be able to come underneath that tackle as he works flat to try to get me. Now, this is a good job by this kid in this respect. It's like right here, watch this. Okay, outside foot back. So now he can take that step, one, and then come under. But he does a great job of using a hands-on technique in order to get in that gap, okay? There's really three ways I can do it. If he's really coming out to get me because of my alignment, if I have a little bit more width, then sometimes I can just come under clean with a swipe and not worry about getting hands-on. If I'm in close quarters, such as he is right now, because he initially had a three-man surface, he understands that, okay, the angle of departure for that tackle is going to be a little bit thicker on him. So he has to be able to get hands-on and then throw and go, okay? He wants to be able to throw that tackle to the outside as he comes inside to get to that B gap. Does a good job of splitting that. Okay, look at a crash technique. Okay, crash technique is a gap exchange as well. Used to be called the squeeze square. So basically in this instance, if that tackle goes down, he's crashing hard and that backer is going to come outside and take the salad. Right there. But who screwed up? He's got to believe what he sees. That defensive end's got to believe what he sees, right? Okay? Got caught up in the eye candy. His job in crash, okay, or any diver or fullback stunt, whatever you want to call it. Anytime that we're sending him down hard, he's got to eat up B gap to A gap, and he's taking the back. He has the back. He has the salad. He has the back. He has the salad. Discipline, right? Do your job. See that? Why does that happen? Now, I'm going to tell you why that happens. Anytime that you typically see, anytime that you see a defensive end not come flat when he has a down block or this type of gap exchange, or if he has a crash stunt on, or whatever you call it, if you ever see him hesitate and climb or get too high, his eyes are not going here to here. His eyes should be going to the hip of the offensive tackle to the back. His eyes right now are going from the hip of the offensive tackle to the quarterback. That's the violation, okay? These guys in 2 points, a lot of times, they start looking at this cat instead of looking at their responsibility, okay? So he has to understand, if that thing goes down, I'm cleaning everything up. I'm taking the back. Any pullers that come at me, I got to blow them up. He should have been under that. He should have been under the load block and been just to make that play. Okay. Now, crash stunt. Sometimes you got to game plan people when people go into the home position or in pistol to where now it's a read off flow. Just depends. Good job out the end. Now again, we're going toes crash. We got two A-gap players, and here's why we really want to go toes crash, because it kind of limits thinking. A lot of times those defensive tackles in terms of when am I coming under, whatever, when's it? Because you never want to run a crash to a closed B gap. Okay, there's nothing coming from the open side, so you can eat that B gap up as he's doing the crash stunt. All right, get the pass in there. All right. This, hold on. All right. That's toes. Okay, that's passed. Don't worry about that. All right. Let me see if I can go to a couple static fronts. All right. Okay, this is train back. Yep. Okay, so here's what we did here. So from the end zone, if I can get to the end zone, give me. Let it clear up for you. Hold on. Okay. We got a 3 technique to the back, and on flow, we're having a run through with one of the backers. Okay, so we're going to bring that backer on a run through based on flow. We're in a static front, so there's no movement. So we're going to be in a 3, and we're going to be in a 2-eye or a 1 technique, depending on the back. Can't see the end zone. Let's see here. Okay, we got bat. There goes the backer. And anytime you get run-throughs with the backers, it's really good versus play action. It really is. Because again, now the blocks become singled up. Okay, went to a wide front on this. Backer runs through, everything's singled up. A chance to get pressure. Okay. All right, that's the rest of that stuff is passed. Let me go back front. All right. Oh, that's past stuff. You see here. One more on this. The bear fronts. Yeah, now I really, the film's gone. Hold on, let's look at the grizzly. Here we go. I really like bear fronts. That's just me. Always been that way all my life. And what I mean by bear is pretty much any type of double eagle construction. I really like it. Now, again, you got to be able to hold up on the back end sometimes. And depending on how you run it, I think you can mix some type of bastardized zones in it. But see, it just eats everything up. It really does. This was, see if it'll clear up. Yeah. Okay, so basically what we had here, we had a 0, a 3, a 5, okay? Another 5, the half would walk up, but this backer was off to the weak side. So you're pretty stout here, okay? Pretty stout here. And really, this guy, because of where he is, this guy right here becomes a free hitter. You know, the only open gap right now is that A gap right here, because all this is eaten up, front side. So really hard to run against. And this is a single gap defense. Have your hat in your gap. Good job with the front side of the weak side backer forcing. Makes that thing come up. How much time I got, Dave?
We're about an hour and 10 minutes in, so you know, it's up to you. How much you got left?
I'm pretty much done if anybody has any questions.
Yep, we can take any questions. Coaches, if you have any questions, stopping the run versus movement or technique stuff, put them in the chat, raise your hand, and we'll get them to coach here.
See if I can see it. Let me see here. It's bigger. Uh-oh, where'd I go? There we go. Okay, here's
all right, Coach.
Yeah, okay.
We got a question here. It's asking, how do you play crash versus pistol?
You have to take it off of flow. So, and the thing like this, in the same respect that we would play flow like with the inside guys, with the tackles, like let's say in deuce, in which they recognize flow on the move, it's the same thing between the ends and the backers in pistol. Because now we have both sides actually being ready to crash depending on flow. And from that, that's why it's important. What we used to do, if we went into pistol and we had crash called, that's why we went to either a toes look, okay, or a heads look, in which now those two defensive tackles are in the A gap. So now those ends can really go and not worried about having a closed B gap. So it turns into being able to read that thing on flow with both backers and both defensive ends. Hey,
excellent. Thanks, Coach.
Hey, real quick. Let me go back on some of these questions. Okay, screenshot looks like, all right, how much penetration? Okay, I think Tanner Osborne said, how much penetration should I, okay, we answered that one. Okay, with glove, what would you do versus a puller? Okay, we answered that one. Okay, when you're identifying a group, what are your keys to go after? Do you teach your O-line to listen? You teach your D-line to listen to the O-line? We try to listen to everything. Now, here's the thing, Dan, and offensive linemen and offensive people are smart too. You know, sometimes we'll make calls that mean something, sometimes we won't. Same thing with offensive linemen. Sometimes they'll make calls that mean something, sometimes they won't. So, you know, you try to listen to as much as you can and try to decipher what you can. It might be right one series, it might be something different the next. So you really don't put that much, credence into it. But what you try to do is just trust your technique and trust what you're seeing with regards to schemes that, and as are taking place within your picture. Okay. Okay. How do you play craps? Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. That was the last question. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, Coach Bailey. Thank you very much. I love the detail that you went into, and thank you, coaches, for sticking around through the technical difficulties at the start. But hey, we overcame it. Adaptable fighting force. That's what we do.
Absolutely.
All right, coaches, check out the YouTube page and make sure if you need to review anything, share that with your staff. Make sure everyone knows about it. And Coach Bailey, good luck this year in Ottawa. And thanks again.
All right, man. You guys take care. Be safe out there with all this stuff going on.